Welcome to the People Performance Podcast, where we discuss all things people performance. The People Performance Podcast is made up of 3 series. First up, we have the Leader Lounge episodes with founder of T2, Martin Johnson. Then we have the guest interview episodes. And finally, we have our performance episodes delivered by our very own T2 consultants. If you've listened to our podcast and you want to get in touch and find out a little bit more about what we do or how we can help and support you, reach out via help@trans2performance.com. You can stream and listen to our podcast on all available platforms. So for now, sit back, tune in and enjoy the People Performance Podcast.
Coming up on this episode.
The red button today that you press, the interactive, was designed here on our platform.
Really?
In Hull. Red button was born in Hull. It used to be the biggest headquartered PLC in Yorkshire, biggest private sector employee in Hull.
And that's an example of a growth-led business.
Yeah.
3-4 years, from 50 people to 400.
Yeah.
And that's notwithstanding the number of customers and revenue and all the rest of it. That's fast growth.
What he taught me was hire for tomorrow as well as today.
Welcome to the People Performance Podcast with me, Martin Johnson.
And me, Sean Royce.
Brilliant. Sean, welcome.
Nice to be here with you, Martin, in this wonderful room.
And we were saying, although we've recorded multiple episodes in this room, you are the first guest.
Very privileged to be here.
Super
excited.
It's super exciting. And it's also exciting because Sean and I go back. I was telling this story in the office the other day, Sean. When I first started T2 10 years ago,
wow,
I think we was about 15 months into our journey. I spoke at some event. I think you was in the audience.
Yeah.
And you was at KCOM then, which we'll come to. But you liked what you heard. And although we were very small and very startup, you gave us an opportunity and you brought us into KCOM in those early days. And what I'll say, Sean, is you was one of probably our first big client, which was daunting for me at the time. But it really helped us on that runway, in those early days. And I'll never forget that. So I just wanted to say on this pod, I appreciate that. But that's where it all started with me and you, wasn't it?
Yes, it did. Yes, I vividly remember it, actually. I think it might have been at the Royal Hotel. I can't remember exactly where it was, but it was a very impactful and you came across really, really clearly and powerfully. And I thought, do you know what? That would be great for our team, just to give them a bit of insight into what leadership's about. And it started from that.
10 years ago, or 8.5 years ago. That. So, Sean, we've worked together since. We've been on a journey through your years at KCOM and more recently with Quicklime. We'll come on to where you're heading next a little bit later in the pod.
Yeah.
But just give us a little introduction. How many years now is it for you in leadership, if you like? Where did it start at KCOM? Because if I'm right in saying you started quite junior and worked your way up, is that correct?
That's exactly right. Yeah, sadly I say I've been there 5 decades. I've been working 5 decades, 80s, 90s, noughties, 10s and 20s. So that's a long time, right? Although it was 89. So I started as a graduate trainee at what was then Kingston Communications. And it was a time when they were just trying. It was owned by the county council, the Hull City Council, and it was a time when they were trying to get some private sector people into the business and get a different skew on the way they ran the business. And I came in as a graduate then. So right on the low, they used to have grades in those days, Martin. On the lowest grade as a graduate trainee, 89.
Wow!
And I stayed there 32 years.
32 years.
Long time, isn't it?
So you worked up from a graduate to eventually the managing director, essentially CEO, was it, of the whole of KCOM?
Yeah, that's correct, yeah. And KCOM was a very interesting business, really, really fun business to be at, because when I started, it was as much to do with the Hull and East Yorkshire business, which was providing telephony services to everybody. And it was a monopoly, in quoting. We don't like to use the word the M word, but it was a significant market power, as we describe it. And the business was always trying to reinvent itself, knowing that it couldn't live on that monopoly forever. And so we had lots and lots of different businesses. And it was a great place to work because there was lots of different opportunities. So right the way through the 90s, we were creating satellite businesses, we were creating software businesses, we were creating cloud businesses later on, systems businesses, all sorts of things to try and work out what would make some money, business-to-business communications right across the UK, that would make business, because eventually Hull would wither and die. As it happens, that never happened. We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
And so it was a great place to work. And by the mid-90s, I was very fortunate. I got a very senior job. A leader that I was working with at the time, who was one of these old-fashioned leaders. He'd coming from the council, but he was a genuinely authentic bloke. You could trust what he said. There was no politics. And I always remember it was when spreadsheets were coming into business, and he wouldn't do that. He could manage on a spreadsheet, but not very well. But he would have one of those great big pieces of graph paper, and he would write with a pencil, and every day he'd sharpen the pencil. So by the end of the year, it was that small, and the rubber on the end of it was bigger than the pencil. And he'd do all his provisions and accruals. He was an accountant. But at that point, there was a great big reorganisation. All the businesses were going to be separate businesses. They were decentralising into very separate businesses to try and see which business would make it. And he kind of went through. He then took a punt on me. Now, he'd worked with lots of people, had decades of experience, some of them personal friends, and he taught me this lesson. He gave me the role, and the role at that time I could do, but I probably couldn't have done it as well as some of the other guys and girls.
So why do you think he took a punt on you, Sean? What was it he saw in you at that point?
I think he could say, what he taught me was hire for tomorrow as well as today.
Okay.
So I could do the job. I probably couldn't do the job as well as some others at that time, but he knew I could do a better job in 6 months. He knew I'd do a better job in 12 months.
Because you had the traits, the characteristics, the drive, the attitude, all of that.
And he saw that in me, and he didn't see that in the others. So that taught me a very powerful lesson. I've always thought hire for tomorrow as well as today. And that's not as easy as it might sound when you're in the bullets, and you want to get somebody in right now and recruit and da-da-da. Well,
we'll come back to this, Sean, because that could be the difference in a hiring strategy between when you've got time in a demand-driven business that's growing exponentially over a period of time versus an immediate high-growth business where you need competence immediately.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see how that mantra plays out. But I like it. Hire for tomorrow. What was the saying?
Hire for tomorrow, not just for today.
Like it.
So that was, and it's kind of the Steve Jobs, A players recruit A players, or great people. I've always been a believer of great people work with great people.
So you got into leadership by your own admission, because I resonate with this story, probably a little bit earlier than you thought, and there was probably other people who were better positioned at the time to do that, but you got your chance.
Yeah. And lots of people will resonate with this as well, Martin. That was the time when I started working, leading people who had got more experience than I, who were older than I was. And that's a leadership challenge in itself, isn't it?
It is. I was in exactly the same boat. So, okay, so what was your leadership philosophy then at those early days? You were trying to win hearts and minds.
Yep.
You was trying to prove your boss's decision correct whilst trying to have your team on side.
Yep.
There's other people looking at you going, well, I should have had that job. What was your approach? What was your leadership philosophy in terms of, if I'm going to succeed, I need to get this right?
I've always been I'm a collegiate type leader. I think leadership is shared. It's not imposed. So you've got to earn that respect, and then you can lead. You can bang your fist on the table as much as you like, but after 3 or 4 months, that ain't going to get you very far. So that was my approach at that time. I thought, I will get the respect. I will show how to lead. And I talk about collegiate leadership with guardrails. There has to be red lines. There has to be a consequence of not doing things. You can't just be really friendly with everybody and make sure that everyone likes you. It's not all about that. You've got to have guardrails. So it was about co-invention with guardrails. That's kind of how I tried to approach it at that stage. And to be honest, that's been a philosophy I've had ever since.
Love that. And it clearly put you in good stead, because over the next decade or so, from there on, you went on to not only maintain those leadership positions, but continue to work your way through and rise in KCOM and the iterations of KCOM. There was so many different variations of it, right?
Yeah, it was a fantastic business. The business in Hull at that time in the 90s, for anybody listening that doesn't know the story, was very innovative. We had a 5.5p on time call that just wasn't done. You can talk to your neighbours forever and a day for 5.5p. But the really exciting stuff in the late 90s was some of the stuff we were doing around broadband and TV in particular. So we've got the BBC building here in Queen's Gardens. You'll be aware. People might not be who are not in here in Hull. But that was because KCOM were here. So the BBC came here because we managed to create a TV product, a video-on-demand product as well, interactive television, and the BBC was so excited about it. Greg Dyke came to Hull, had a look at it. The red button today that you press, the interactive, was designed here on our platform.
Really?
In Hull. Red button was born in Hull. That happened here.
How many people would know that?
I don't know. And the video on demand product that we had, which is essentially the forerunner of Netflix or Prime or whatever you see today, was designed here. So it was the first commercially deployed video on demand service in the world. Yeah, and we even had Rupert Murdoch fly over to come and see it because he wanted to put his Sky platform onto it. So it was an incredible time, and we floated in 1999 on the London Stock Exchange. So we became a FTSE 250 company. We were .com bubble. It was that time. It was an incredible time to be around tech. Clearly that bubble burst very quickly. We were bigger than Rolls-Royce. We had a market cap that was larger than Rolls-Royce at the time, which was nonsense. But eventually we just couldn't scale that business up, the video on demand business, the interactive TV business. We just didn't have the capital to push it out. And although we had 10, 20,000 customers taking it here in Hull, and the vision was to launch it right across the UK, it just didn't happen.
So, I mean, again, you talk about that exciting time, and it absolutely was. But then the challenges came. Yes. As a leader, we always talk, don't we, Sean, when I work with you and your teams about optimal performance and how you've got to enjoy the flow moments. You've got to embrace those moments of flow, execution, the good times. But you've then got to endure the drudgery. And I like that word because drudgery is drudgery. It's not all good. It's not all high performance. Sometimes you've got to dig in, and sometimes due to markets, due to challenges, due to whatever it might be, you have to go through drudgery, and leaders have to lead through it. Yeah. So what period of time do you think presented the most challenge or drudgery for you? What was your toughest time throughout your career, and why and how did you sort of deal with it? Yeah,
I think probably two times, and there were two times in that particular period. There was the .com crash. That was tough. We were a public company. We were FTSE 250, FTSE 100 knocking on the door of, and then the crash came. And then how do you manage?
How did you? What did you have to do at that time to sort of keep the ship on track, galvanise the troops? And because it's hard to keep the optimism and the morale in times like that.
One thing you've got to be as a leader, I think, and again, one of my leaders taught me was the ABC of leadership. Anticipate is the A. You've always got to be 2 steps ahead. You've got to anticipate what's going on. And that's for your investors, anticipate what they want, invest for your customers, for your partners, your stakeholders, and of course your people. Anticipate what their needs are and work to that. Have belief. I always had belief throughout that time, and the other time was the 2008 crash, which was tricky as well. That belief that the business is a sound business, that you've got good people, and if you haven't got good people, you've got to manage that and manage them out or manage them up. And the C is confidence. There is a huge amount of gravitas. If you've got the gravitas and people see you're a confident person, confidence breeds confidence. There's nothing more compelling, there's nothing more seducing than a confident leader. Now, I mean confident in a way that not arrogant, but actually that's somebody I think will take us through this. So I was thinking, right, I knew what the problems were. I knew we could get through it. I had strong belief in the core business. I had strong belief in the core of the people. And I was very confident that we can get through that. There were times, Martin, that you didn't want to show that actually there was some wobbles and I wasn't too sure at times. But externally, you've got to show that confidence.
And even if you ABC the hell out of it, like you have described there, which we all do in positions of responsibility and leadership, and you show that confidence out to the troops, and you shoulder the burden of the situation. It doesn't mean we don't go home on a night though, Sean, and go, oh my God, and we have our own moment of threat state or wobble, because we do, right? We do. That's entirely human, because you're putting on that front and you're trying to lead your team through a tricky period. Doesn't mean to say that that doesn't bear heavy on you. I think that's fair to say, isn't it?
Yeah, it does. And I think it depends. I'm lucky I've got a very stable environment back at home. I've got people to talk to. I think coaches are very important.
Yeah.
You do need to share these things. It's been great working with you for the last 10 years or 8.5 years, whatever it is. Sometimes picking up the phone with you and just having a conversation is really helpful. And coaches generally, as I say, I think it's really important not just to have it all on your shoulders, because it's a very familiar phrase, isn't it? But leadership is a lonely place.
It is.
Everyone looks at you for comfort. That's why confident leaders really, really powerful trait. But not even what you see externally from any leader in the world, they're not always as confident as they think.
No.
Yeah.
No. One of the things I've observed in you, Sean, over the years and admired, and actually this has been backed up by the way people speak about you in organisations to a person, more or less. And I mean this sincerely. I don't think I've met a single employee ever who's worked in KCOM or Quicklime who's ever said a bad word about you. In fact, they've only ever said great things. Now, that's a rare thing to hold such a senior position, to be responsible for making decisions which don't please everybody all of the time, to lead complex organisations of that scale and magnitude, and still usually, more often than not, win hearts and minds. Yeah. It fascinates me that. I mean, you are a very humanistic leader. You called it collegiate earlier on, but with guardrails.
Yes.
But you're definitely, I would say, more humanistic than big stick and consequence type leader. But you seem to have got that balance right. Would you agree? And if you could go back 3 to 4 decades, is there anything you'd change?
That's a great question. You can't have spoken to too many people either. I like to think so. But again, confidence is a great thing externally, and you do always question yourself, don't you? I often think to myself, could I have been just a bit more, could I have got to a decision quicker? And that's something I always think about. Rather than getting somebody on a journey and getting them in the right place, and eventually we get there, we make the right decision, and that it's a win-win. That's how I describe my collegiate leadership with guardrails. We get a win-win. Or could I just really upset somebody, move them on, and get there quicker? I'm not sure I could, but I do constantly think about that.
But then isn't that a battle of, you're battling with your value system of what I truly believe is the right thing to do and the way I think we can get there in the right way and manner, versus going, but I could push myself to be something that doesn't sit entirely right in my value system, but I know the outcome would be we would save a lot of time, get there quicker and move on. Yeah. That's an interesting dynamic for someone to battle with, isn't it? Yeah, and I always think businesses are there for decades, not for 3 years, 5 years. So let's get the right solution, let's get the right culture and the right environment and the right leadership, and we will get a business that makes very good returns for the investors. Over a longer period. I think that, and it's a sustainable business. And I think you need a sustainable approach to that. And that's always been my philosophy. So I think it's done me okay. I'm of a certain age, so it's maybe going to be difficult to change. But I think that's the right way. And again, I know we like our football, and we talked about Manchester United in the past, and we kind of think about how do you manage certain characters, and we talk about the great Sir Alex Ferguson. Not many people could have put up with an Eric Cantona. Yeah. But he, and I use that example a lot in business. You, at points in time and that journey in the business, you need a change catalyst.
You do need to transform your business. It's just the way it is. Everybody listening to this will recognise in their journey of a business that they've been in, or they're going to, or what they've seen externally. Businesses need to change and adapt, and you need a change catalyst, and they are different types of characters. You do need them in businesses at times.
You do, and it's the great conundrum of going, you need them, but you also need to be able to contain the situation so it doesn't filter out and affect the wider environment. You use the Cantona example and Fergie. It's a very widespread sort of example of a complete maverick, genius almost, who could change a game, win a game, could affect a direction of a club at that moment in time. But also that comes with challenges,
yes,
right? Culturally, behaviourally, etc. But he did a good job of containing that, or at least most of the time. So it worked for the team and not against it. And I think that's a little a key thing there, isn't it? If it starts growing legs and it becomes uncontrollable, you've then probably still got to make a decision, haven't you?
Yes, absolutely. And I've worked with a couple of people just like that, where they made a huge difference to the business. I'm not sure we'd have got our businesses to where we needed to get them to without them. But at some point, there's a I talk about guardrails or red lines. At some point
they were crossed.
Yes, and you've got to move them on because it compromises the value system of the business or the cultural approach of the business.
Love that. Let's go through to something that I always talk to our customers about, but you've been on both sides of this fence, so I'd be interested in how leadership differs in these different types of organisations. I always look at a business and go, are you more of a demand-driven business or a growth-led business? For those who probably think, well, what is the difference? And a lot of people will know, but demand-driven is very much like you talked about the monopoly of KCOM in the early days. You have a couple of £100 million business. That is through X amount of customers. That is based on the demand they have for your products and services. You keep those customers happy. They hopefully keep spending money with you. You do look for growth opportunities here and there, but it's on a more longer term, slow basis. And you pump all your effort and resources into delivering customer excellence to the demand of your customers. Where a growth-led business, they still want to do all of that, of course, but they've got huge, fast growth ambitions. We want to double the size of this business in 3 to 5 years. We want to bring new customers in. We want to enter into new markets. We want to expand. They're two different environments to operate in. I think it's safe to say you've operated in a version of both. Mm-hmm. Does your leadership have to differ depending on whether you're in a high growth, fast demand growth led business or a more steady, strategic, demand driven business? Does it have to change, and if so, how?
I think the key attributes stay the same. As I say, I'm a collegiate leader with guardrails. I like people to co-invent, but the business, but they are two different beasts that you're running. So when I was at KCOM, I think we had unprompted brand awareness in the top 5. Coca-Cola and Nike and KCOM. It was if you ask people what's the name of a broadband provider in Hull, you'll get an unbelievable awareness of KCOM. Not Quickline. Totally the opposite. It's less than 8%, and that's prompted. So nobody knows Quickline. Everybody knows KCOM. They're very different beasts. And what I found what that means, Martin, is you can attract really good people because people recognise the brand. They recognise the profile of KCOM in particular in Hull. For those who are not in Hull who are listening, it's a hugely well known brand. It used to be the biggest headquartered PLC in Yorkshire, biggest private sector employee in Hull. So it's extremely well known. You can attract good people. It was very profitable. It kicks out a lot of cash. You could attract really good people. In a small business, when I joined Quickline, we had 35 people. We've got 460 or something now. We roll out broadband right.
And that's an example of a growth-led business. 3-4 years, from 50 people to 400.
Yeah.
And that's notwithstanding the number of customers and revenue and all the rest of it. That's fast growth.
And customers have gone up tenfold. And we've, from nothing, we've built 200,000 premises with fibre, from nothing, over 36 months. We've won 4 of the biggest contracts in the UK to provide rural broadband. So it's a very and what that means, Martin, going back to it, you can attract really good people in an established business that's very profitable and that's got a very strong brand recognition, versus a business that no one's heard of with 35 people. How do people come into that business? Now, I'd like to think they came because of the way I lead the business, but that's very arrogant, maybe.
Well, some probably did.
Yeah, I think some did because of the reputation we've got in Hull and my leadership at KCOM. But again, I'm talking about football. But when you go from Division 4 to Division 3 to Division 2 to Championship to Premiership, every time you need to change out your squad.
Yeah,
and that's the difference. So you're forever thinking about, right, what's the next part of the journey? Who do we need? They were good for this part, but not for that part. And that is very difficult. That is very different from a challenger brand versus an established incumbent.
It's like Wrexham at the minute, under the story of Wrexham with Ryan Reynolds and all.
Yeah.
They've gone from non-league to Championship in 3-4 consecutive seasons. And they've had to continuously let players go and bring new talent in. Even though those players worked hard to get you there,
yes,
it's a very difficult thing to say you're no longer required or we need to find something else.
Yes.
And I think that quicklime journey has very much been like that as well, hasn't it? And it's difficult. And then you're constantly weighing up who's got the headroom to keep pushing up in the higher leagues.
Correct. Yeah.
And that's if I just stay with this person, they're not there yet, but have they got the headroom to push on and kick on with us at this moment in time? And that's a bit of an analysis you've got to do as a leader with teams as well, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. And I'll go back to what I said to start with. You recruit people for tomorrow as well as today. If you can get more and more people that can do today and tomorrow, then you've won. But it's not always the case. So you've got to kind of, and I like to, we've got to manage them respectfully. And if they've got to go, it's got to be an elegant exit. Because I always believe, don't burn your bridges. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? There might be a customer, there might be a supplier, there might be a partner, a stakeholder. And I just think it's a respectful thing to do. People are right for different phases of growth, are right for different businesses, and sometimes not right for certain phases of growth and not right for certain businesses. So it's just the way of the world. But you've got to manage it, and you've got to recognise who is and who isn't on the bus at the right time.
Love that.
Yeah.
Let's fast forward a little bit now to where we are today.
Yeah.
So you've had a long and successful and rewarding career throughout the decades in KCOM. You then, last 4 or 5 years, have been at Quicklime, which has been a really different challenge, but again, another one I know you've thrown yourself into and enjoyed. I think it's safe to say now we can say on this podcast, I was going to say you're coming to the end, but that sounds really like finite, doesn't it? And Sean's not going, anywhere off the planet, but you're coming towards the back end of your career.
Yes.
And it's in the offie right now that you're discussing you stepping back from full-time executive duties.
Yes.
And almost as you transition into what eventually will be the dreaded word of retirement.
I know.
Because believe it or not, as young as Sean looks, Sean's getting to that point.
That's right.
I won't share the age, but Sean's getting to that point.
That's true.
And so we've had some conversations lately about purpose.
Yes.
For 4 or 5 decades, you've had a purpose.
Yes.
And for anybody listening, a purpose is what gives you your sense of contribution in the world. It's why you get up in the morning and you have a role or a sense of contribution. Being a father or a husband or a friend is not full purpose. It's part of it, but you have to exist outside of that as a human being. So for many of us, our careers give us that. And certainly for a career like yours, where you're rising the ranks and you've got immense responsibility and you're running technology organizations and like some of the things you've talked about, the red button and achieving advancements in industry. And it's been exciting and you've had real purpose for 4 decades. And now you're going into a phase where you go, well, what happens when that's not there?
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about that, don't we? That sense of purpose and purpose post-career. What's on your mind about that right now, Sean? I know you're putting some thought into it, but you're still going to need a purpose, right?
Yes, exactly. And look, one of my, probably the most important leadership lesson I think I've learned over the last certainly 20 years and actively pushed in the last dozen years or so is in a business is a core purpose. And you say, we'll talk about purpose in a short while, personally as well, sense of purpose. I'm a huge advocate and believer in people get out of bed for a purpose, not for a salary. I think people come to work because they genuinely want to achieve something in their life. I try and create a core purpose, North Star mission, whatever you want to call it, in a business, and I've done that in the last couple of businesses. So we've got 8 little words at Quicklime. It's connecting rural communities to a world of possibilities. There's no mention of internal rates of return or profit or how many customers. That's a story, that's a purpose that you can get behind. We don't just sell broadband. We don't just build networks. We change people's lives. That's what we do in these rural communities. So I'm part of my leadership philosophy is you must have a core purpose that resonates, and people got to get out of bed for that purpose and make a difference. So you're right. In business, that's great. Yeah, I've done that.
I mean, even when you talk like that, Sean, I'm sat here going, like, wow, because obviously this is what we work with companies on all the time, and we know from a psychology perspective, individuals need purpose, companies need a purpose, and when the two connect, when helping you achieve your purpose gives me fulfillment and helps me achieve mine, that's the sweet spot.
Yes.
So it's wonderful to hear you talking about it, but like I can see how passionate you are about that, because the work, the job, the responsibility of that to champion that for the organisation is deep within you. So what happens when you don't need to do that anymore?
Yeah,
or it's not your responsibility to do it anymore.
And I call it the flag on the hill to make it to bring it to life in my businesses. So that flag on the hill is a business flag on the hill. Yeah, that's kind of the. And now, as you rightly said, and maybe we'll talk about the retirement word. I don't like to use that, but certainly stepping away from exec roles from a full-time perspective is how do I get that sense of purpose outside of work, and that's the piece I'm working through that myself, to be perfectly honest.
Well, I always say, Sean, when it comes to purpose and sense of purpose, which we work a lot with individuals on, and this isn't the first conversation I've had with someone who's coming to the end of their career or looking at what they do next, let's call it, looking at what they do next and saying, well, I worry about I'll be bored, or I'll go out my mind, or I'll start to deteriorate mentally, or and what they're really saying there is, what is going to be my purpose? And like I said, people might go, oh, well, you can spend time with your wife or your husband, and you can travel the world, and you can go on the golf course, and you can, do all of these things. That's not purpose, right? That's really nice to have the freedom of time and choice to do those things a bit more. But you ain't going to be doing that 365 days a year. You need to exist outside of your relationships, outside of your family, outside of your hobbies. And so one of the things I was going to link into is that, as well as being a busy executive, you've always dedicated your time to causes.
Yes.
You've been, I think, is it non-exec chair, or you've chaired certain things like the Tigers Trust. Yep. I think you've done another couple as well, haven't you?
Yeah. So, and that's important to me, and I think that's part of the value system. So that is my sense of that. The Tigers Trust exists to create opportunities for people that don't have the privileges that we have. Certainly in areas of the city where it's very, it's very difficult. The demographics are very, very poor. So it exists to give pathways to careers, pathways to opportunities, pathways to opportunities for young and old alike. It's not just the youngsters as well. So I've worked with Tigers for 12 years through the power of the football club badge. I've worked with a charity called Run With It, which is a wonderful charity that's about trying to create environments where you can learn maths and English outside of school, because some people don't thrive in school. So we take them to inspiring venues like the football stadium or the rugby stadium or the cinema, and then they look at how many seats there are. There's 10 across there and there's 20 across there. That means there's 200 seats, or they'll do an interview with a footballer and write a program note or whatever it might be to get their English skills. And it's just a better, more rich environment. Some people thrive in that much more so than they will in school. And you see children learn and develop, and that's a really rewarding.
So does your post-corporate world purpose maybe lie in some of this stuff? Because I think, like you say, when you're not ultimately on the hook for the levels of responsibility and accountability of running large organizations, but you can gift your time and contribute and help causes, that could be the sweet spot, right? Because you still get to enjoy freedom of time of choice, but you also then still have something within you that knows you are giving, and that therefore is giving you purpose back. I guess, I mean, I'm not asking you for an answer on this thingy, but you're going to need to do something, Sean.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I guess one thing I pick up, even not only in this interview, but in the almost decade I've worked with you, is you are a humanistic person who gives to others, and that gives you a great sense of purpose and fulfillment. And so the answer probably lies within that somewhere, I would have thought.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people would be like me. Everyone listening to this will be thinking, at some point, I'm going to retire. And what's my sense of purpose? That is mine. In business, some of the two things I'm most proud of at 40,000 feet are when I see our people develop in or outside of the company, and I see them get great jobs and lead businesses, and I think, wow, maybe I played a small part in that. And customers that have had a wonderful experience with us, and we have changed their lives. So they're two really powerful senses of purpose in the business. That isn't too dissimilar to what I'd like to do outside. And when I say outside, I still want to get involved in non-exec type roles or advisory roles or whatever it might be. I won't do nothing. I just think working 70 hours a week takes a lot of energy out of you, and leading people and having that weight on your shoulders for 40 years or whatever it might be is tough, right?
100%. But people listen to this as well. Everybody's purpose and sense of purpose needs are different.
Yeah.
So what I said earlier about some people might go, I've worked hard all my life. I've got enough in my pension pot to live to my means. I do want to play golf twice a week, travel the world, do 3 holidays a year and spend time with my grandchildren.
Yeah.
There's nothing to say that in its entirety, that's not a sense of purpose. If that's unique to you and that's what's going to gift you the reason to get up every morning with a smile on your face, knowing what you're going to do and make a difference, then that's fine. But for some characters and individuals, that is not enough. And they'll need something for themselves. In my experience, Sean, and it might be a little bit of a provocative statement, but most human beings need to exist outside of family relationships and general day-to-day. Most people need something for them that they achieve, that they do, that gives them their sense of purpose. And so it's worth people thinking about or listening to this. No matter how many years you are off, have a think about it. Otherwise, it will come very, very quickly. Very
true. Yeah, very true. And I think I thought I'd been thinking about it for quite a while. And actually now I'm beginning to think, crikey, maybe I need to think a lot more about this because I am about to go into this.
But you answered your own question there, Sean. The two things that you enjoy the most is seeing people thrive and succeed.
Yes. Yeah.
And if you start with that in mind, I think you'll probably find the right choices of where you're going to spend your time.
Yeah, and yes, I think you're absolutely right. I was born and bred here in this area in Hull. I know, Martin, you were the same. I've got a strong desire to make this a great place, and hope people can stay here and create jobs and opportunities and grow this area. I've always been proud of the area that I've come from, and I'd like to do that going forward. So I think anything I will do in the future will be one in this area, and maybe we'll talk about regrets or thoughts about the previous few years, because I have often thought, should I have gone out somewhere else and done something else and left this area, or maybe I'd love to have gone to work in America and I never did it and all that type of stuff. But this area's got a very big pull for me, and I do really want to see it grow and thrive, and there's so much. It's a great opportunity for people, and it's a great area for development. We just haven't quite got it right yet, and I'd love to be able to do that.
I love that because I went to Gartner, as you know. I spent several years outside of Hull, travelling to New York and working in London, and I feel so passionate about Hull because, and this is why I came back and set up T2. Having been around different places, we sometimes do ourselves a disservice. We think of ourselves as little old Hull up on the nobody wants to go up on the northeast, and having been around and come back, we don't give ourselves enough credit.
No.
There's so much good stuff going on in this city. There's good people, hardworking people. We look after each other.
Yep.
You know, we do business with each other. We like to see our sports teams thrive. We like to see our communities thrive. And there's something to be said for that. And this is why I bought this building here.
Yeah.
People say, why haven't you not moved T2 from Hull? Why don't you move it to Leeds or London? I'm like, why the hell would I do that? Number one, I live here. I'm from here. Number two, my family are here. Number three, if all we ever did from Hull was move out to the big city, we would never, ever be the strong city that we are. So I feel the same as you, and knowing that someone like you is going to stay in and around and help other people on that journey, I think is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. I've had that conversation when we were at PLC. Let's move the headquarters down to London instead of Hull on Carr Lane. Violently pushed against that. It was the wrong thing to do. We never did it. And likewise, even in the business now, well, can we get better talent in Leeds? Can we get better talent in Sheffield or Manchester? It's not, that's not right. It's not, the headquarters is here, and this is kind of, we're part and parcel of Yorkshire, and Hull's a very important part of the story. So I think that will certainly be part of my sense of purpose. And I'd like, maybe not everyone is the same. I don't know, Martin. I always think they are, but we should see our people thrive. You should really. There is a. It's very rewarding seeing youngsters thrive, or even the older generation thrive, because it's a very, very powerful and compelling proposition, isn't it, if you can kind of make a difference to people's lives?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. The reason T2 exists...
That's why you exist,
right? The reason we exist is for that. People say to me around... I genuinely don't... I'm sat here with you this morning, Sean, doing this, and we could speak for hours. Yeah. I'm seeing Amy in the corner looking at the clock thinking... How long have these guys been going? But I genuinely could speak to you for hours, and it doesn't feel like work, because... already I'm thinking in my head a couple of things you've said throughout this podcast, some really golden nuggets, some little things that just make you stop and reflect instantly. And I'm already thinking about people watching this episode or listening to this episode and having a moment of inspiration. If they're having a trouble at work, or if they're a leader struggling, or if the business is not doing too great, or they're in drudgery, and you've said a couple of things today where they go, do you know what? People have been here before. We can do this. The thought of that change in that nanosecond in that person's mind is fundamentally why we exist. Yeah. And that doesn't feel like work. That just feels like pure purpose. Yeah, talking about that word. Yeah. But all good things do come to an end, Sean. And again, I think once it maybe in a couple months' time we get you back in and we do another one. But
sense of purpose.
Yeah, and we'll ask you, what is it? Have you found it? And what does that look like? But we always finish with a question here on the podcast with our guests around leadership. Throughout that, I don't want to keep saying 4 or 5 decades to make you feel old. But throughout that time, it's fair to say you've had a lot of leaders yourself. Yeah. And you started this podcast by speaking about one particular leader. You didn't name his name, but you alluded to him. Who is the greatest leader you have worked for? And it can be for any reason. Yep. And why? Okay.
I had a leader when I was back in the early 2000s. I'd worked for very logical, very rational leaders in the past. Accountants, engineers, that's how they're wired. And then I went, and then 2 businesses were going to crash together in KCOM, and a guy called Kevin Walsh was going to come and run it. And I'd never come across Kevin. He ran the interactive TV business that I talked about. He was a sales and marketing guy. Yeah, he'd come from FMCG background. It was all about brand and sales. I thought, this will be interesting. Let's see how we get on. He was inspirational. He was a very strong leader. He talked about guardrails. He taught me about guardrails. Cross those lines, and that was it. Whoever you were. But if you're within those guardrails, he was incredibly supportive. And I think there's 2 or 3 things he taught me. First of all, I remember him saying that any investment committee, any business case, will struggle to stop an investment around the customer. How do you put a rational case together that says, actually, we shouldn't be investing in the customer? And and that was his sales and marketing background. So he would put toy glosses on every table in meeting rooms. They were the customer spectacles. You must look at every decision through those spectacles. And it was quite a very powerful way of describing his philosophy on the business. So that was very, very insightful and kind of made you think, yeah, every business is about customers. No business can survive without customers. So let's start thinking from there and work our way back in rather than the other way around, which is what many businesses do. And it's so easy to get into that trap. So he was very, very strong on that. As I say, he had very strong guardrails. He wouldn't cross. There was a red line you wouldn't cross, but he was very, very supportive in that as well. But he would always think about developing people. He would always want to see you on the next next role, the next career step. Always wanted to push you. And I think that's very important too. So, and I'll leave you with one thought that he would always say that's resonated with me. Despite being very sales and marketing, I thought he doesn't really understand numbers or profitability or returns for the investors. He would always say, you manage what you measure and you attack what you target. So you would set a target, you would measure it, and you would always track that, and he would be relentless in that. And you look at the modern businesses today, a lot of the tech companies, they talk about OKRs or objectives, key results. It's the same sort of thing. You know, you're kind of measuring something very, very clearly, and you're forever managing it. That was his philosophy, and that's something I've always bought into. And targets are extremely important, whether we like it or not. They are important, and if you have a target and you measure it and you attack it, you'll invariably do it. You'll invariably get there.
I just want to dig one little a little bit more into that, because there is something I've observed in you, Sean, that's fascinated me over the years, which I don't know if you're aware that you do really well, but you've done it in every session that I've ever worked with you in, or any engagement or group work or conference. You've sort of displayed it several times on this podcast today, but you have the ability to retain key pieces of information that you hear and consume from people, sessions, education, whatever it might be. The ability to process it and then apply it in a context. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
One of the things that I've always been impressed with whenever I've done something, your summarization of it. So let me replay what Martin said and what we're going to take away as a leadership team, X, Y, and Z. And some of the stories you've told today, I remember what my mentor said, and I remember what this person taught me, and this is what it meant, and this is how I applied it. That's not a thing that lots of people do or have the capacity to do. Is that a conscious thing, or is it just the way you're wired? You've always sort of done that. You take in information, you process it, reflect, and then you think, how can I apply this in a context?
I think is it conscious? I don't know. I'm a trained accountant. That's my background. I don't like to say it an awful lot. But I'm much more interested in words and storytelling and hooks. That's why lots of things I say, like you manage what you measure, just stick in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, and then you can. I always, because of the rational part of my brain, and you'll tell me more about that. You'll know far more about the brain and how it works, and the chimp paradox and everything else that I do. But it kind of then, those little hooks and sound bites and those philosophies then link to my rational part of my brain, and I kind of work it out. That's how it works, I think.
Subconsciously, what you're very good at is what you put in the brain's computer, which is fundamentally what you pull upon in times of need. You're very selective with that. Yeah. Like you say, hooks.
Yeah.
Some people put everything in and can't retain anything because there's too much. Some people don't retain anything and put nothing in. I think you're really good at sifting through whatever the conversation is, whatever the messaging is, whatever the information is, and putting certain bits in the computer for you to pull out at a later point. That's probably a bit subconscious. And through practice and habit, it's probably become something that you just do because it serves you well. Yeah.
That's very kind of you to say so.
Sean, have you enjoyed yourself?
I've had a great time. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
I think we're on an hour, and
is it really? We could go on forever.
We could go on forever.
Is Amy saying, "Come on"?
No. We're on an hour, and we could probably do 2 or 3 easily. sat here reflecting with you on the past decade, Sean, has been great for me this morning. I meant what I said at the start. I think you've always been incredibly supportive of me, and talk about like you like to see people do well. I think on a couple of occasions, and you haven't meant it in any other way, but I think you've even said to me, Martin, I'm really proud of you. I'm proud of T2. I'm proud of what you... I remember you at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when it was me and a computer and Claire in a pod office.
That's right.
And you must have been thinking, am I really going to bring these guys into KCOM? You know, and
I could see something in you. I could genuinely, and I can still see it today.
Thanks, mate.
And you've got that drive as well.
Yeah.
I can see that in his eyes. Can see it, can't you?
Thanks, mate. And I genuinely appreciate that. I was saying to the guys earlier on, I went, Sean was probably my first big customer, and I've always appreciated that. And look, as you go into whatever you do in the future, I'm sure we'll be collaborating in some way. I'm sure there'll be opportunities for us to work together on stuff, because I'm very interested as we go through the next decade at T2. Not that I've made it, but as we're getting more established and more, how do I give back a little bit? How do we help Hull? How do we, involve ourselves in other stuff to support the next people coming through? So I'm sure there's things we're going to be doing, Sean.
I look forward to it.
Over them to you. But for now, thank you very much. And we'll be back shortly with another People Performance podcast.
Thoroughly enjoyed it, Martin. Thank you as well.
The People Performance Podcast, brought to you by